morning, class. Today we are talking about comparing and contrasting. You know, kind of like comparing this to that, or comparing this to that, or comparing this to that. As you can see, we're going to be comparing and contrasting a few things today, but we're also going to be considering why an author would use the compare and contrast organizational strategy in their writing. The ability to compare and contrast has uses far beyond the 6th grade ELA classroom. Practical applications include choosing where in the house you want to hang out for the day, but also choosing what clothes to pack for vacation. Like, do I want to wear this or do I want to bring this? The question is, why would an author use a compare and contrast organizational pattern? A few months ago in our classroom, we actually talked about comparing and contrasting. We read 2 different articles, Wild Animals Aren't Pets and Let People Own Exotic Pets. The 2 articles had similarities. They both were talking about these pets that were wild animals or exotic animals like lions and tigers, but they also had differences. That makes me think of a certain TV show I've been watching lately. But anyways, so the first one was showing us that it's not a good idea to have wild animals as pets. And they brought up things like the Zanesville incident. Do you remember that? Also, public safety and compassion for animals who would otherwise be living in the wild. And then the second article talked about why it's a good thing to own exotic pets. You know, that people can act responsibly towards those wild animals, and it does prevent extinction of certain species. We made a Venn diagram, and we talked about the similarities and the differences between the articles and what they did have in common as well. Being able to compare and contrast the 2 articles, we, as the readers, were able to form our own opinions based on the knowledge that the authors had given us. This week, we are reading Many Species Take Turns Communicating with Each Other. In this particular article, the author uses, in the first 3 paragraphs, the compare and contrast organizational pattern. Let's look at those 3 paragraphs together. When people talk to each other, they usually take turns. They know when to speak and when to listen. We consider it disrespectful to interrupt. This kind of conversation is often considered a human trait. Many believe it separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom. However, studies show that back and forth conversations happen among animals too. The conversations might involve the delicate hand gestures of chimpanzees. Whale songs travel thousands of miles through lonely oceans. Some conversations exist only in the brief flashes of light between fireflies in the dark. When we look at a Venn diagram, the 2 circles represent the 2 things that are being compared. And for this particular paragraph, those 2 things are humans and animals. Humans, as discussed in the passage, know when to speak and when to listen. Humans also consider it disrespectful to interrupt. I think we talked about that in class. On the other hand, animals communicate differently. Chimpanzees use delicate hand gestures. Then we have the whale songs. And the author also talked about fireflies using brief flashes of light. The author also talks about humans and animals and the similarities they have, like back and forth conversations. So compare and contrast. Why do authors use compare and contrast? They use it to help the reader build understanding of key ideas within the passage. So when we were able to look at 2 different articles and compare and contrast, we were able to see what the authors were trying to communicate to us about their different viewpoints on a similar subject. In this particular article, the first 3 paragraphs use the compare and contrast strategy to help the reader build understanding of how animals communicate like humans. So today we've done a lot of comparing and contrasting. We have looked at different spots in Miss Bright's house. We have talked about what clothes we're going to bring on vacation. We've reminded ourselves of when we compared and contrasted in our classroom with exotic animals. And we've talked about the first 3 paragraphs in the articles you are reading this week in your Google Classroom. So, I think we've got this down, and I can't wait to hear in your writing your use of the compare and contrast organizational pattern. Good luck, and we will see you next time. Bye.